fun as I'm going deeper and deeper into my research on what the future holds for all of us and how to upskill for the upcoming future. I'm absolutely thrilled to have with me Siddharth Roy Kapur, who's the founder of Roy Kapur Films, former managing director of the Walt Disney Company of India, and the former president of the Producers Guild of India in a tenure lasting over 6 terms. He's also widely acclaimed for his amazing movies, of which I have probably seen all. And he was also credited with taking India to the Oscars with an Oscar nomination in 2023. Thank you, Siddharth Roy Kapoor, for doing this. I'm deeply, deeply grateful for you for taking out your time to do this for us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, terrific. So as we start to set the context for the future, you've had a tremendous career in the media and entertainment space. And as a filmmaker, I'm assuming you have to keep your eyes on the pulse of the audience, not just sort of where they are, but where is the buck going to move to? So as a filmmaker, why do you think it's important to keep your eyes on the future?
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that you do need to constantly keep your eyes on where the future is moving to, because you're really creating something that you're hoping that an audience will like in a year or two from now. And the pace at which things are changing, especially when it comes to tastes and culture and sensibilities and really influences, is so rapid that if you don't do that, you're in danger of being left behind. And something that you feel is so relevant when you're greenlighting it today might be a little passé, a year or two from now. So you constantly need to keep looking at trends that are emerging, themes that are emerging, ways of living, the fault lines in society, the conflicts that are emerging from the pull and tug between modernity and traditionalism, especially in countries like ours, where you've got large swathes of the population moving up the socioeconomic ladder, living lives that their parents could never have imagined, but also having been brought up in deeply rooted traditional environments. And so the pull and tug of those influences on the way that they are living their lives. I think these are things that make for great conflict and therefore great, cinema.
Okay. So you're saying essentially the lead time to make a film would be anywhere from a year to two. And given the rapid change of society and the way people move, whatever you've decided
out for trends. Yeah.
Okay. And sort of be futuristic, saying 2 years later, what our audience is going to want to consume.
Exactly. Okay. And is what I'm enjoying now still going to be relevant to them?
Okay. Okay. Because that's just the lead time for your film to sort of
production. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay, great.
Amazing. I mean, a great example of this is the 2 years of hiatus that we had during the pandemic. There was a whole bunch of releases that were held up for those 2 years and then released after that. And they felt dated. That first year after the pandemic, you felt like, oh, this was stuff made in another time. And it had actually just been made 2 years earlier or a year earlier. But so much had changed. People's lives had changed so much. They were suddenly exposed to so much content in that year and a half, 2 years of sitting at home, all kinds of content from around the world, that suddenly that stuff that was created, that's actually the best example of this.
Okay. So the content becomes obsolete even in a matter of a year or two. You're seeing large shift, and therefore very important. Okay, this is a very unique perspective from obviously a filmmaking perspective. Okay, so as you think about the future, there's so many things and factors that contribute to the future. Other people have brought up changes in technology, environment, sustainability, governance, diplomacy, etc. As a filmmaker, what are some of the factors you feel influence the future of your world?
I think the beauty of making content that has to resonate emotionally with people is that all the factors that you mentioned really play a role in that, right? You can't divorce one from the other. It's the accumulated result of a whole lived experience that dictates what you react to emotionally. And so some of that will be political, some of it will be social, some of it will be cultural, some of it will be global. There's no way of knowing what that would be. But I think if you had to look at something tangible, it's really looking at the attention spans of people, looking at whether, the fact that the style and the grammar of storytelling needs to evolve with what people are now being stimulated by. If 15-second reels and TikToks and shorts on YouTube are what is giving people an entertaining experience now, Do you have time to layer your narrative with a half an hour setup before you get into the heart of the story? Or do you need to jump straight into it in the first 5 minutes and then draw them in? Those are very tangible considerations, I think, that as filmmakers you have to make today, because you are in an attention deficit environment right now. And for you to really stand out, you've got to be able to cut through the clutter with your content.
Okay, so you're saying consumer behaviors have changed. We're all in this sort of real 15-second market. But as a filmmaker, do you feel like long form content, as you've known it, is going to shift or in the coming years? Or do you think long form has its place and it's here to stay?
I like to believe it has its place, but I think I'd be foolish to imagine that it can remain static in the way that it has to it has to evolve. The grammar has to evolve. Sometimes it can be counterintuitive. I mean, you have Martin Scorsese making 3.5 hour movies now, which he was not allowed to make earlier because now he can make them for digital and they can be long. So it's not to say that people are not giving their time and attention to longer form. But like we were discussing a little earlier, it has to be something that arrests your attention, that grabs you, that captures the zeitgeist of the times, that that earns the amount of time that you're going to be giving it. Because you're making a big commitment when you say, I'm going to watch a whole season of a show of 45 minutes per episodes and 8 episodes. It better be something that really, really viscerally cuts through the clutter and is able to grab your attention and justify that amount of time. So I think in long form, we tend to fall back on the whole cinema will never die. And, it's been around for more than 100 years and all those cliches. They're cliches because it's true. It has existed all this time. But we also can't rely on just the form existing. We have to rely on how are we working with that form and keep changing and evolving it as we go along.
Okay. So evolve the storytelling, even if it's long form, at least evolve the pace of storytelling.
Yes.
Okay, great. That's amazing insight in terms of consumer behaviors and how, if environment is now the big thing, then how do you induce that in your film, etc. Great.
Exactly. I think if you can find things that are relevant or that are going to be relevant, or that you can prognosticate a little bit and say, okay, in a year or two, these things will be relevant, then you're going to be able to justify the amount of time you're asking people to commit to watching long form content.
Okay, wow, that's a very good insight in understanding future trends from a consumer perspective. Maybe let's take a little shift to marketing of the films, and I know you spent a long time in your career working in marketing and corporate communications. How have you seen the shift in marketing since you've been in this space? How has it already evolved since you first started, and what are you seeing coming in the future?
I think the biggest change really has been with social media, the one-to-many communication that we had for all these decades, really, or centuries in terms of marketing, where manufacturer messaging to consumer being X, right? And consumer being a static receptacle of whatever it is that you want to provide them. And then whether it grabs their attention or not, it will lead to action. Today, if you're not involving the consumer or the audience in your marketing messaging and having them be a part of it in some very tangible way, you're unlikely to catch their attention. You've got to be able to make things interactive. You've got to make them experiential. You've got to be able to immerse the consumer in some way in what you're doing. You've got to also deal with consumer fatigue and jadedness of, since the time they were born, being inundated with marketing messages, and therefore a certain amount of just having like blindness to marketing messaging if it's not going to grab them by the collar and really shake them up, because you're dealing with a consumer today who has been, like, I mean, you look at the stats. I mean, there are stats around the number of communications that we are exposed to every day, and they've gone up exponentially over the last few years. So you've got to be able to find ways in which to remove that cynical lens that the audience now has when it comes to sort of cookie cutter marketing messaging, and be able to be authentic, be real, get them involved in the content in some way, do something that just is almost subversive, especially when it comes to the way that you're promoting content rather than just cookie cutter trailers and promos.
Okay, so you're saying make it more inclusive, make them part of the brand building, make them part of the marketing. And anything you've actually done, like anything you want to explain and illustrate through an example where you say, look, here's what we did or somebody else did.
I think when you look at the Barbie campaign last year, I think that's a great example of taking that brand and really being able to taking, I mean, it was sheer genius, just taking pink and making pink the flavor of that month completely. The number of brand tie-ups that they did, the number of immersive experiences that they were able to create to make it an experience that really let the kids and the little girls know that they were obviously the core demographic, but letting families know with a wink and a nod that it was for them as well, like a Pixar film. It had something in there for the adults too, so don't feel like it's only for the kids.
Yes.
There, if you want to look at different layers, then you will be able to look at different layers within the film that will also draw you in as an adult. And so it became a date movie, it became a family movie, it became a film you could go to with friends, it became a cosplay like sort of experience. I think Barbie is a great example of that hardcore commercial film that managed to really blow it out of the water with their marketing.
Okay, very very immersive. Right? You had these large scale Barbie dolls planted in different cities. So okay, so you're saying
Yeah.
that's where it'll evolve to. You think it will become as immersive as that?
I think when you have the right piece of like you can't do that with Killers of the Flower Moon, right? Because that's a different kind of film and you will be silly if you do it. So if you have the right film to do it with, then obviously that's a great advantage. And Barbie just lent itself to
Beautifully to
being
that.
done in that way. But with Killers of the Flower Moon as well, you're going to have to find a way to do it in the way that's authentic to the ethos of the film. But it's not just your regular trailer and promo and interviews with Scorsese and DiCaprio. That's not going to be enough.
Sure. Okay. Let's maybe shift from marketing now to co-production, right? So similarly, like how have you seen production evolve? And do you think it's going to fundamentally shift, like just the art of filmmaking? Is that going to shift, or do you see that think of it as pretty standardized in terms of your elements that you need to make a movie, and how is this possibly even going to move? Like, are you seeing technology and AI coming into the film production process as well? And if so, how?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's no question about it. So there are things that will remain the same, right? Actors need to learn their lines, directors need to know how to block a scene. You've got to have drama and conflict and tension and humor, and all those basics will remain the same. But the mechanics of film production are changing as we speak. I mean, you have virtual production setups now where there are often times that you don't need to go to locations at all. You don't need to even go to another country or able to recreate those environments in a very, very real and authentic way. And therefore, you're being able to really to really economize and make your whole process very, very efficient. The use of VFX has been there now for many years and is constantly improving. The use of AI will I dare say also help the production process very significantly. You have some amazing tools that AI is able to provide you, from storyboarding and conceptualizing to giving directors a chance to actually have the entire film play out in front of them even before they've gotten onto a set for the first day.
Oh,
You
okay.
just input your script into AI and it's able to give you its own rendition of how the film should be filmed. And then
Wow.
you can go in there and you can obviously tweak. So you have complete control. But the first thing is that it'll give you its own interpretation of things. So as long as you're willing to, as long as a director or a producer feels that they have the final authority and the final say, I think they will be able to use AI to great effect, because as soon as you feel power is taken away from you, then you resist technology. But if you believe that technology is going to enable you to either economize or improve on what you're doing, then I think the sky's the limit in terms of how well you can use it.
Okay. And are you seeing this happening? Are you personally, within the setup, are you using GPT-4 to, sort of play with dialogue, play with screenplay? Are you guys actually using this stuff, or is it something you parked for a little bit later?
So, I mean, there are a lot of ethical considerations around it as well when it comes to the writers. And I think that formed part of the writer's strike that just happened in Hollywood last year
Sure.
as well, where what is the extent to which you want to use AI and how much are you then going to credit AI versus crediting writers, et cetera, et cetera. So we're treading a little cautiously and figuring out as we go. When it comes to the production process, I'm seeing that being something that we will use a lot. When it comes to scripting, I think that's something that we're we're learning as we go, and we're trying to involve writers in that process as well, so that it becomes something that we do collaboratively with them.
Sure. Okay. So you seem to be a believer in this stuff. You're like, look, as long as you collaborate with it, as long as you maintain an ethical line, there's something for everyone to gain.
I think there's no point resisting technology ever. I mean, at the end of the day, in your personal life, you can choose to use it as much as you want to, but in a professional environment where you're trying to move forward and run an ongoing business, even if that is in the business of creativity, if you're going to resist tools that can enable you to do your job better, then you're just being an ostrich with its head stuck in the sand. You really need to help the technology improve things for you. I mean, there could very well have been a time where, animation was something that was looked at as being something to be resisted because it was non-human. It was, it was not something where human beings were acting out anymore. But some of the most emotional films have been made by Pixar, right? And that's really been able to reach out into hearts and minds. So why should we resist it? It's something we should embrace and use to the best of its potential.
Sure. Okay. So now, if with this advent of AI and technology in the process, from a job perspective, do you see certain jobs sort of falling off, and do you see new job categories emerging then as an advent of AI and technology in the process?
Both. So I see that certain jobs might become redundant as they will become across various industries. But like you said, there'll be certain new jobs that come up, and that I think the history of technology has always told us that does happen. It's not like everyone lost their job when Henry Ford started making cars and when
Yeah.
Steve Jobs started making the iPhone. So I think it's going to be something that we learn as we go. But I think for all the redundancies, there will also be new jobs that come up.
Okay, so off the top of your head, like what are a couple of jobs that you think are going to fall off? Is editing going to fall off? Like what's going to fall off the radar?
I think things like, I mean, not to knock down, not to take specific labels, but things like if you need someone to supervise the scripting process, like someone to keep note of which revisions were made when and how, what changes were made to make sure that things are this version versus that version. You right now have people doing it. You might not need people to do it anymore. You might have AI do it. The whole storyboarding process, you might have AI come in and help with storyboarding entire screenplays and showing you how they will look in various styles and in various permutations and combinations of camera lenses and focus and things that will only help the director take a call between and the DOP a call in terms of how to shoot. Um, just a lot in the organizing and planning part of things when it comes to scheduling, when it comes to location hunting. There are certain things right now that are manual that can be done by AI. I at the same time I'm seeing that will not mean that the people doing that it'll hone their jobs better and
Sure.
help them to make better choices and to take better calls.
Okay, it'll be an aid and not a replacement.
I think so. I think so. Because you'll still need that human intervention when it comes to a certain level of nuance, which AI yet has not been able to provide you.
Okay, and there's all these deep fakes going around, and with actors, and just the IP rights behind a lot of their work, their voices, etc. Where do you see this as a contradiction between this advancement in technology and then the threats it poses? Where do you stand on that spectrum? And do you really think it poses a threat, or do you think it's just people are overreacting and it's
No, it
just
does pose a threat. I think we can't run away from the fact that it does, because with deepfakes and with the ability to create visual imagery that is really authentic, that can depict things that create public consternation and fear and sow chaos, that's very real today. I think actually the biggest business opportunity of the future might be in organizations that are able to verify fake from real.
yeah,
When
sure.
it comes to speech, when it comes to visual, static visual, when it comes to audio visual, I think there's a lot of money to be made by certified fact checking, sort of organizations and AI checking organizations in the future.
we'll add that to our list of new careers, emerging careers, and quote you there.
Yeah,
Okay, so you're saying a fact checker, but it's amazing how the technology is just so real, right? Like it's so difficult to detect because I've seen some
exactly.
of this.
Exactly. I say that everyone's going to need a filter on their interfaces in the future that are able to actually tell them fake from real. Because especially the older generation, which believes completely in everything that is offered up to them, whether that's on WhatsApp or that's on, I mean, they are going to find it so difficult. Frankly, we will find it very difficult as well, because who's to say an image is fake or real? So you'll almost need a filter on all your devices to be able to pop up and tell you AI generated versus real. And I don't know how technologically that will work, but that's going to be a massive need of the future.
Okay, and since you alluded to the strike in Hollywood, from a creative perspective, right? So you said a lot of the sort of scheduling, manual, managerial type tasks might get moved to AI. As a filmmaker, right, in the creative domain, when they've gone on strike, as a filmmaker, do you really think you could use GPT-4 to write a movie for you that would be impactful, connect with the audiences, etc.? Like, do you really think the technology is up there to that level? With your repertoire of cinema, and you made a crazy repertoire, right? You don't have like one style of cinema. You make movies across age groups, across segments of society. Do you really think GPT-4 is going to be able to give you a script that you'll produce?
I have to admit, I haven't experimented on it enough to be able to say that with a definitive yes or no. It is getting smarter every second as we speak, right? And artificial general intelligence is going to be a thing in the future. But I dare say, if I had to hazard a guess right now, I'd say it probably does not match up to the level of lateral thinking that a human being can have when it comes to creativity. There are some things that are just counterintuitive that actually are the twists that make a piece of content work versus following what was always done in the past. It's the famous Steve Jobs line about, you can research the hell out of things, but finally the consumer will only tell you
What they
what
want?
they know they want. They can't tell you what they don't know they want.
Correct.
So that, I think, is the same when it comes to content as well. Right now, it's all based on empirical data of what has worked in the past, and therefore that's the best that GPT, I think, right now can give us. But those leaps of imagination, the lateral ways in which human minds can flit from one thing to another and then connect them in ways that are so magical and beautiful when it comes to content, I'm not sure that it can do that for us yet.
Yet. Okay. But you're saying it is getting smarter day by day.
I
So
yeah, I mean, I have to put the yet at the end of it because, it is finally human beings are building these,
sure.
and there will come a time when they can be programmed to take those leaps on their own. Now, whether those leaps work or not, we don't know, but
Yeah.
it is possible.
But then it's also openly available and accessible to everyone, right? So then everyone has access
Yes.
to the same base level information, and then obviously
Yeah.
then it becomes tougher and tougher to make a movie that really hits the spot, right? Because you're working off of
And
something.
it's really as, yeah, and even if people are using it as a tool, what's going to connect with someone viscerally is still going to have to be something that really, really breaks through and reaches out and grabs you. Now, whether that's created by a human being or created by AI in the future, we'll have to see. But right now, I think I think it's on the side of the humans so far.
You think it's on the side of the humans. Okay.
For
Well,
now.
yeah, I mean, I see, okay, as a consumer, right? As a consumer, we don't really care, right? We don't care if GPT-4
Absolutely.
did, AI
Absolutely.
did it, SRK did. Like for us, it's just like, give me the best
True.
content.
I
So
agree.
this is more a problem within the industry as opposed to external to the
Yes,
industry, right?
you're
Because
right.
consumers are greedy. You just want the best, right? You make it on animation, you
Absolutely.
make it whatever it is.
Yeah. They want to be stimulated in a way which is worth the time that they're spending on that sort of piece
That,
of
that, that-
entertainment.
that's
I
literally
agree
all that
with you.
matters. Okay, let's
Yeah.
shift from this AI conversation to a little bit of distribution. I come from the video cassette era. I'm assuming you do too. And of course,
Yep.
it's completely shifted. And it shifted largely shifted the last 15, 20 years. Right? It's a massive shift in how we all consume content. Where do you see this going? Is there something new that you think is going to come up? Where is this shift going to come and how do you see it panning out?
There'll always be shifting sands when it comes to distribution. I mean, who would have predicted 10, 15 years ago that there'll be something like Netflix out there, right? Or that then that something will be creating content on its own and it'll be internet based, it'll be in more than 200 countries around the world. So I think it's constantly shifting sands. The what we can be sure of is it's always going to tilt towards consumer convenience, more consumer convenience, because that's where traditionally things have always gone. How do you get someone what they want, when they want it, in the way in which they want it, at the time they want it? So I think that's going to be the guiding light of where technology leads us as we go forward.
Okay, so you're saying everything is consumer centric. Ultimately, it's all consumer centric.
I think so, and that's how distribution has evolved. I mean, earlier we weren't able to release our films in Brazil, for example, because you'd have to find a local distributor. So a Brazilian audience would not get to watch a Hindi film ever because there was no way for them to get access to it. But today with Netflix, they can. So that's great for the Brazilian consumer in the same way it's great for us because we can watch French and Spanish films. Now, that's not something that they've done through altruistic through an altruistic requirement. It's more because that's the way the business model will evolve and that's how you'll be able to reach out to more people. But today I can watch a Spanish film when I want, at the time I want, in the way I want, with subtitles or dubbed, which I could never even imagine doing earlier. I get to watch movies within 4 weeks of their theatrical release or 8 weeks of their theatrical release, which earlier was impossible. Those are all things that for me as a consumer are only getting better. And I think that's where technology will take us.
Okay, so consumerism, capitalism, those will prevail and those will sort of dictate the way forward. Okay, and what
Yes.
about the cinema as an institution? This debate's been going on forever, right? Like I remember
Yeah.
reading 10 years ago saying, oh, all these cinema halls are going to shut down. There's all this digital stuff. They haven't shut down. 12th Film just did it. I think it's on 120th day today or something. So some of these movies
Yeah.
are making that mark. People are still going to the cinema. Where are you on this? Is the cinema hall going to exist as an institution or going to die out 10 years from now?
I believe it will exist.
It
I
will.
think, I think it will exist. I think the obituaries have been written for cinema halls for a long time. But when you look at any collective sort of communal experience of watching something, whether it's a concert or it's theater or it's opera or it's cinema, there is a certain value that human beings ascribe to that. Versus the convenience of watching something in the comfort of their homes in their pajamas and sort of like putting it on pause and going to the loo and coming back and watching it. That's a different kind of convenience that they enjoy. But the social aspect of that interaction of enjoying a piece of entertainment has existed since the Colosseum, where lions were eating human beings. So I don't think that's going away. That's here to stay. Now, what they will want to consume when they go in for that experience is evolving and changing. It's seeming like they want to go in for something that's either larger than life or spectacular or immersive, and therefore they can only enjoy it in the comfort of that massive cinema hall on an IMAX screen. Or like you mentioned, it's something like 12th Fail, which is just such a marvelous piece of content that they cannot wait to go and watch it in the cinema because they've heard so much about it and they don't want to wait for 8 weeks, right? But so the challenge is all on the creators because that you have human beings want to have that experience. How are you going to give it to them in the way in which will make it most attractive for them to go and take the trouble to get out of their pajamas and go and buy that movie ticket?
Okay, so the onus is on the filmmakers then, and adding more pressure.
It is because I think it's not the need for that experience is not going away.
Okay, so you think we're still largely a communal society? We want to do things together, and with more and more isolation coming with this whole AI and robotics, etc., you're going to want more physical communal experiences.
Yeah, I mean, both are going to coexist. You're going to have people wandering around with that Apple Vision Pro on their heads, living an alternative life. But you're also going to have times when they want to go and hang with their friends and watch a movie in a cinema hall,
Okay. So you think it's going to stay? You think it's here to stay? And as long as we keep putting out good content, it's here to stay.
Yeah.
All right. I also want to talk a little bit about this contradiction. Right? You mentioned the deep fakes are real and they pose a threat. But if you can take somebody's voice and use it for dubbing, it'll probably save the actors a lot of time and energy to have dub their voices and then do regional and Spanish and whatever else, like if you just get the tonality and sort of roughness of someone's voice. So are you seeing this, this AI as something that's just going to remain a conflict or contradiction, or do you think actors are going to, or filmmakers are going to sort of toe some line and say, look, for these things, let's make these sort of industry standard acceptable? Are these dialogues going on in the inner circle saying, look, dubbing, what's a big deal in dubbing, right? Let's just use AI for dubbing, or are there still very strong sort of like Chinese walls between these areas?
See, it's bound to come to that at some point once the interface gets so good that even the actor admits that they could not have done a sort of better job in the in the dub than the AI. At that point of time, those legal, moral, and ethical questions are going to have to be asked, and standards are going to have to be set around the permissions that you're going to need from artists to be able to do this in order to smoothen the process, where they don't feel compromised because you're using their likeness, and you feel like, and they don't feel compromised creatively either, and you're being as efficient as possible while being creatively like sort of having the creative integrity of the product as well in mind. So it'll keep evolving as the tool gets better. I dare say today, if you ask Mr. Bachchan to dub something in English after he's dubbed it in Hindi versus using AI, his English dub in person is probably going to be much better because he'll bring a certain energy that AI will not be able to bring, probably. But in, say, 2 years, if it's at that point where even he admits, yeah, it's sounding kind of great, then that's the point at which you'll have to get into permissions and legalese.
Okay. So, but that conversation is not happening right now. There's no legal construct being laid out right now.
Well, you've had certain artists like Mr. Bachchan actually, and also Mr. Anil Kapoor actually going and sort of copywriting and their name, their voice, their likeness, things that they believe can be used in the future in various ways that they would not be okay with. They've actually gone out there and done that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so you are seeing some level of protectionism coming through where they're saying, look, this is mine and I don't want anyone to.
Exactly. And I think that'll only increase when it comes to artists.
Okay. So the artists are going to want to sort of copyright and save, whatever they have as their intangibles. But potentially filmmaker or people in the business, you might say, look, do we really want to spend, I don't know how many hours dubbing you in 50 languages? Can we not just use your voice?
It'll definitely be a conversation, and principles will evolve out of that.
Okay. Okay. So some legal work still left to evolve in this space. There seems like it's too
going to be something in the next few years.
And even in Hollywood, right? You're saying there's no formula, there's no legalities, there's no work yet. Okay. So
I don't think we've point yet where artists are okay with their voice being just legally reproduced in multiple languages or changed in ways where they've not given their tacit or like specific approval. We're not there yet. Now, is it being done? It's obviously being done by pirates and by people all over the world in a non-legit way. But here we're talking about it's legitimately put out.
Okay. So now with all these changes coming, as I sort of getting towards the closure and moving more towards skill development from a career standpoint for young people who might want to be in the performing arts or production or in this broader media and entertainment space. With all this advent of AI, if you're going to be able to, use AI and sort of modify things and play around with them on your screen, in terms of skill building, what would you suggest? Let's take an actor, for example, an aspiring actor. What sort of skills do you think they should be working on as they try to build their careers for the next decade or so? Do you think it's going to be like go to like the standard, go to NSD, get trained at NSD and come to the film industry, or like what would you say?
I'd say for actors, the craft will not change. The need for will change. The need to hone your voice, project your voice, work on your physique, work on your skills, your like sort of athleticism, your voice modulation, your like sort of body language, your sort of emotive control. All those things are pretty much the work of an actor, and those things will not change. So I don't think actors need to do very much when it comes to this. Obviously, there are modules that are introduced about, acting in virtual spaces where you don't have the benefit of an actual environment around you. You don't have props around you that can help you. You're not really performing with an artist. You're performing with a mark,
Sure.
which has to represent. Those are things that I think can only help artists as they go forward, because they need to be comfortable sort of performing in even more unnatural environments than they were used to in the past.
Okay, so just in terms of just the setup, like since you're going to be able to create a sort of fake set or a sort of landscape, you're saying,
More in virtual worlds, just becoming more and more comfortable with that, which I think is happening already anyway.
okay, fine. But you think the skill set will remain the same, because you'd be able to sit on your computer as a director and say, okay, let's just change his voice, let's change his movement, change his body. I mean, you can play with it, right?
So that's nothing an actor can do anything about, right? The actor still has to do what they have to do.
Okay.
If you're talking about the filmmakers are going to use the actors, already existing skills or, abilities, that's what the filmmakers will have to do.
Okay, okay. And from a filmmaking perspective, in terms of skill set, what you learned and what you sort of gathered over the years, if someone were to plan for their future, what would you say they should keep their eyes on in terms of skill set?
I definitely say when it comes to the like pre-production, production, post-production, really being able to understand where technology is right now, how virtual production can help you, how AI can help you, how VR can help you. Those are things that I think are important for producers and directors to get a handle on. And I think also navigating through some of those complex issues around to what extent are you wanting to use AI in your regular job of development, script development, idea generation, concept development, and to what extent you want to, stay authentic to the way that you were working earlier. Those are key questions I think everyone should be asking themselves.
Okay, so you're saying the technology is here, you've got to embrace it, and you've got to learn how to work with it and how to collaborate with it, and depending on what you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. On a closing question, are you generally optimistic about what the future is going to bring, or is there a dark side to this future that you see? Is there a contrasting dark side and a contrasting, like a bloom and doom scenario that you're seeing pan out?
I like to be optimistic, but I have to say that there are some, very hard notions that we're going to have to contend with in the future. Truth. What is truth anymore in an environment where truth can be, so many versions of truth can be created? How is that going to be used by rogues, individuals or rogue nations to be able to, foment unrest in the future? Uh, all these questions I think we're going to have to contend with as we go along, and also the fact that we've plunged headlong, as human beings tend to do, into this technology. But this really is one of those few technologies that we might not have the ability to completely control. There are, so far in all our analog and digital technologies, there is human intervention where you can control it. But when it comes to AI, that's not the case. And it's a self-generating, sort of automatically improving, artificially intelligent by its very nature, being that we are creating. And therefore, what potential that has on the dark side in an unregulated environment, I think we're going to have to figure as we go along. So those, I think we can't run away from those concerns as we go forward.
Okay, so there are concerns, there are real concerns, and we might have just created our own little Frankenstein here. And this Frankenstein is getting more and more intelligent, and it's this exactly same world, right? Okay.
So it's not, and I don't think we have an answer to it yet, but because the species is programmed to scratch its itch, right? It's gonna keep doing it. We're not going to not keep going down a road because we have to find out, we have to open up every door and find out what's behind it. That's just the nature of who we are. And therefore, behind a few of those doors might be things that we are not very sort of happy to encounter.
Okay, so we're going down Alice's rabbit hole, and we don't know where this rabbit hole is going to end. But I think, as you said, like if you have the right ethical frameworks and if you have some legalities and some structures around this, then at least majority of the world will be probably in a better place in the years to come. Okay,
Actually, I have so much to be done on the on the verification front. And if there are ways in which private enterprise, I'm sure it's going to happen, will get into just the whole verification of and authentication of things. That I think will be very, very important as we go forward.
Okay, yeah. I think that's a really good point. I think there is a lot of work being done on this. I think they'll have to just bring it down to the consumer level where you and me will be able to just tell, right? Like it's being
It's our
done by,
filter, right?
yeah.
It's a truth app on your phone, basically.
Yeah, I mean they had Truecaller evolve and then it became like so normal. I think this has got to evolve to that point.
Gonna happen.
It's got to happen, yeah, because you can't have all these artists, and it could happen to any of us, right? It's just not about an actor or an actress. You don't want, I don't want to be deep faked on and put on Marine Drive or something. So obviously, if, as an actor, even more, and politicians even more. I mean, the layers of complexity, as you said, the rogue nations could really take this to another level.
It'll be true for everyone. I mean, for actors and all that, obviously, but for the average consumer, I mean, you're the hero of your own life, and your life is important to you. You don't want to be misrepresented in any way because, like, that's your world, right? And you don't want to be, like you said, be deep faked or be, or be put in a situation where you have to justify yourself for something that you haven't done or haven't said. It's very, very important as we go forward.
Okay, terrific. I wonder how many movies are going to come out on this, what this world could be like, tons. Yeah, because it's still emerging, right? We still don't have an answer to this. So I think a lot of content coming out in this space. Looking forward to watching it all. This conversation has been amazing. Thank you so much. I got to learn a lot from you. It was highly educative, as always. Thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Had a great time.
Thank you so much. Thank you.